So, the next speaker, really honestly, the next two speakers are in combination the entire fault that you guys are here, right? Like this wouldn't have happened, none of these things would have possibly been in the realm of existence without these next two people. Because when I was learning how to fly, I actually had quit flying before I earned my commercial pilot certificate, because I was just basically convinced I was actually incapable of doing it. And without these two people and their guidance and everything that they did for me, I wouldn't be here, and some number of you probably still would be in existence, but not here right now in this hangar with these cool woobly lights. So I'd like to introduce first the person who trained me to be a flight instructor, and so many more things in reality, Radek Wyrzykowski. Just slow walk it. It's fine.
That was a gross exaggeration, but thank you for that introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. How is everybody doing? All right, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to repeat or spell my last name. And when Douglas was asking me to be here, I basically said it's going to be an honor and privilege to be able to be here. So thank you for allowing me to do this. But at the same time, I said, okay, so how long do you want me to speak for? And he says 15 minutes. So I said, impossible. You said our 15 minutes? No, he said 15 minutes. So I will do my best. I have a piece of paper here. And I have a few points that I want to make. Bottom line, I fell in love when I was 6 years old. And her name was DC2. I never forget, my father was flying on a commercial flight from my hometown Rzeszów to Warsaw, Poland. And there was that beautiful airplane. And just before airplane was ready to taxi, there were no fences, there were no guards. And just before the airplane was ready to taxi, stewardess came up and said, ladies and gentlemen, if any of you is not traveling to Warsaw, please exit the airplane because we are going to be taking off soon. But for me, it was such a big thing that I remember it just like it was yesterday. So, of course, many years have passed since that time. Now I am CFI, CFWI, MEI, and a few other letters. That doesn't matter. It's not really important. I've been an aviation educator for 2 decades, flying for about 3 decades. But we cannot do it alone. That is going to be my point here overall. I realized that aviation is not really easy the day after I got my instrument rating. That was a big breaking point for me. Some of you may know this story already. I'm sure Douglas does, because I've been repeating it over and over again to different audiences. But I was working on my commercial certificate, and it was a time that I had to build my cross-country commercial time. And I was coming back from Bar Harbor, Maine, back to my home airport, Great Barrington, Massachusetts. I got weathered out. To make a long story short, I diverted to Keene, New Hampshire. I landed there. Weather got really bad. I decided to stay overnight. Next morning, I woke up, and I'm thinking I'm an instrument-rated pilot. So I should be able to do that flight. I almost felt like people are going to laugh at me if I'm not going to do it. So I decided to fly instruments again. Day after I got my instrument rating, one voice was saying to me, Radek, you have only about hour and a half of actual experience with your flight instructor on board, how much do you really know about that instrument flying? But that other voice was saying, you're an instrument-rated pilot, go flying. So I filed. Those days, we had no cell phones that we could connect to our headsets, talk to ATC over cell phone. I had to file, get something that is called void time, 15 minutes, run to my airplane, and then contact ATC in the air. Also, clearance will come on the phone and the FBO. So when I call the clearance, and always during my training, I had problems usually with those, holds, and also, as you have guessed by now, English is my second language. My primary language is Polish. So I always was worried about copying clearances to make sure that I get everything correctly. So when I call for clearance, guess what I'm getting? They say you are clear to keen VOR, here are your holding instructions, and expect further clearance in the air after 20 minutes. And already that other voice is saying, Radek, don't do it, but the voice on the other shoulder is saying, you're an instrument pilot, rated pilot, go flying. So I took off about 300 feet, I'm in a solid soup, I'm climbing up. Now my job is to climb up, turn back to that VOR, center the needle, figure out how to enter this hold that I hate with passion, and get my clearance. I'm switching frequency, I'm talking to Boston Center, that is who is handling that area. Right away they come back, they say radar contact, and they say, we have your clearance, are you ready to copy? Single pilot, solid soup, day after instrument rating. So what do I say? Of course I say, I'm ready to copy. And as I'm saying it, I'm realizing I have no paper, no pencil, nothing to write that clearance on. So sweat is dripping down my forehead. But thank God they come back and they say, you are cleared as filed. So at that moment I realized that certificate itself doesn't mean anything. That it takes That's a whole process that we have to learn. It's all about experience. And that's why we have to keep ourselves as one community. It's very important to learn from each other. So at that point, something was born that later on was called IMC Club, but that was 2007, if I have it written correctly here, that the guy got my job as a chief flight instructor right here in Providence at Horizon Aviation. So I'm walking in, I'm trying to get to know all my students, and here is this skinny guy. I am looking at him, and I say, so, what do you want to do? What do you want to do in the future? Because I like to know, each student what they are thinking about. Oh, I want to be a commercial pilot. I want to be an airline captain. I say, okay, just hold on. First, you are going to learn to be a career flight instructor. And then later on, you are going to decide. No, I want to be commercial pilot. Okay, we'll see. And that is how our journey started. Doug was an incredible student, very talented, one of my best students. Very good sense of humor, as you probably already know, but at the same time, sometimes I had problems trying to figure out, is he joking? Or he is serious? But we had a lot of good times there together, flying. So when he became a flight instructor, he still wanted to be an airline pilot. But the deal was that we trained people from within flight school. So once he became a flight instructor, he had to stay with Horizon for 2 years there. And I said very simply, if you work here for me, you are going to act as a career flight instructor. It doesn't matter. You're going to build your time will come along on its own. And somewhere along the way, it clicked in, and Doug said, you know what? I want to try this career flight instructor thing. So in 2009, Doug was already teaching with Horizon. We were sitting down there, weather was bad, we're talking about, flying in actual conditions, IMC. And we're saying, how we like being in actual. And I said, hey, how about we form a club and we call it an IMC club. And that is the true story. That is how IMC club was born. Later on, actually, Doug was our designer of our first logo that we had out there. From that point on, this organization grew from just a few people at the local airport to over 3,000 registered members and 120 locations globally. Later on, it was acquired in 2015 by Experimental Aircraft Association. I worked there for a few years, for 7 years, as their senior program manager. But Doug was definitely an integral part of that very beginning. So why IMC Club? What was behind it? It's what I'm saying all along. We are a community. I don't know if you realize, but this is a very exclusive club. There are only 600,000 pilots in the US. That is less than 1%. Actually, that is less than 0.5%. 0.002%. Exactly. And yes, the initiation fee is very high. It's very expensive, and it takes a lot of work. But don't forget that you are a part of that community. At some point along the way, I was, and I don't know if I'm running out of time. If I am, just kick me out of here. I'm fine with it. I stopped by at Columbia County Airport, and I see this guy in Cessna trying to start it up, and it's not starting, and he's cranking and cranking and cranking, and there are other pilots around looking at him and saying, well, is it crazy? He doesn't know what to do, what's going on. Instead of doing that, what I did, I simply show him, okay, just stop. I came up to him, I opened the door, and I said, what is going on here? What's the problem? How can I help? And what am I discovering? Student pilot on the first solo cross country, trying to start it up. Okay, show me what you are doing. So he goes along the checklist, and apparently he's forgetting to go mixture full forward. So we started up. A very simple way, helping each other, look around, see if somebody is doing something unsafe maybe, talk to them. Because we are that one community. So as I would like to, I know I'm out of time here, so let's wrap it up. But what I'm going to say is, whether you are starting, whether you're a pilot, whether you're an experienced pilot, be a part of that aviation community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job.
One more time. So Radek trained me. Everything he said was basically a lie. He doesn't drink. So he's quite capable of just lying and not telling the truth. I was a terrible student. I didn't read any books. I showed up my first day for flight instructor training with this massive pile of books wrapped in plastic. And I walk up to the desk and I plop it on. I'm like, all right, I'm ready. And he goes, oh, wow, you bought brand new books for this. And I was like, no, these are my books from training. And he's looking at me and he doesn't know what to say. And he goes, you never took them out of the plastic? I'm like, yeah, I just didn't think it was that important. And he just shakes his head. He just goes, okay, okay. All right. I never would have been there with that pile of books wrapped in plastic at his desk if it wasn't for this next person. Because like I said, I had quit flying. This guy called me on the phone. He says, hey, I noticed that you haven't been at the flight school lately. I'm like, yeah, that's because I'm not flying anymore. And he was like, well, did you finish your commercial? Did you get a job or something? And I was like, no, I didn't finish my commercial. I was like, I can't get a job. I was like, obviously this thing is not for me. I was like, I don't know. I've had 7 different flight instructors in 3 weeks, and they all tell me I don't know anything. And he said, all right, why don't you calm down? I'm like, why don't you calm down? I'm like, you called me. Taylor Swift had not released her song yet, so I couldn't reference it. But I'm like, why don't you calm down? I don't know, I am calm. He's like, listen, come in, we'll fly, and let's just see where it is. I'll pay for your flight. You just come in and fly, and let's see where it is. So I came in, I think we flew twice, and he signs me. He's like, yeah, I'm just gonna sign you off. And I'm like, this guy's either quacked or he knows something, right? I guess at this point, I can acknowledge the fact that he was probably a little quacked, but also did know something. So I would like to introduce the person who brought me to Radek's desk, Bob Berlyn.
Good evening. Can you guys all hear me? Excellent. To be honest with you, I wasn't going to say much about Doug tonight. But with all the comments that have been made so far, I can't resist. One of the reasons I called him that night or that day was when he first showed up, I was the chief instructor at this flight school, at Horizon. It's a flight school in Warwick. And I saw Doug, and I wasn't so sure what was going to happen. I was, to say the least, a little bit apprehensive. And then I flew with him, and I realized that there's some real talent there, and that's how that sort of thing all started. So you listen to all these speakers talk, and everybody has a good deal of experience. And I've always thought that aviation is one of the last bastions of experience counts. And I still believe that today. I do want to say that I work for Doug, he's my boss. And working over at AirVentures is interesting. When we hire flight instructors, and you've probably seen the instructors here, they're wearing the same kind of uniform that I've got here for this occasion tonight. One of the things we tell them is, this is a flight school probably like no other flight school you've seen before. And it's very true, because I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of them. And this place is a little different, and that's really a good thing.